they're off. Welcome to Around the Track, the most exciting 15 minutes in wealth management by Dynasty Financial Partners and hosted by CEO Shirl Penney.
Hello, welcome to another season of Around the Track, the most exciting 15 minutes in wealth management. We're here live in Saratoga Springs at the oldest sporting venue in America, where I'm going to be hosting conversations with some of the top independent minds in and around the industry. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Around the Track, the most exciting 15 minutes in wealth management. I'm your host, Shirl Penney, founder and CEO of Dynasty Financial Partners, and I'm incredibly excited about today's episode of Around the Track because I'm joined by one of Dynasty's board members and former Chairman and CEO of Ogilvy, John Seifert. John, thank you so much for sitting down and having this conversation with me.
Great to be with you, Shirl.
All right, we've talked about the one rule that we have on Around the Track, which is we're going to do our best to make our way around the virtual track together in around 15 minutes. So I'm going to ask you 8 rapid-fire questions. Each one of those questions represents one of the furlongs around the 1 mile oval that'll be depicted on screen behind us. So you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so look, in life and in racing, how you break from the gate matters a lot.
Yep.
So let me give you a nice softball. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
I'm a Midwestern boy. I grew up in a small rural town in Wisconsin for the first 11 years of my life. I grew up in a time when your parents told you to leave the house at 8 a.m. and not come back until 5 unless you were bleeding. So I spent all of most of my childhood outside playing with friends. We were surrounded by immigrant families in Wisconsin, furniture makers, cheese makers, meat packing. My father was in the textile business, started by his grandfather who came over from Europe. So it was an idyllic childhood.
So John, what drew you into the world of branding and advertising?
It's actually an intervention. I was home from college one weekend, and I went running with my mother's best friend, and she was a fantastic athlete. And we were halfway through our run, and she stopped me, and she said, listen, I've got a message for you. And I was kind of taken aback, and she said, you got to stop coasting. You're taking life, you're far too easily. You got to get more serious about your future, what you want to do. She said, I have an idea. And this was a woman who had worked for David Ogilvy in New York for many years. And she said, I have a relationship with a guy that runs the company right now, the head of Ogilvy in North America. He's willing to give you a summer job. Here's his business card. You don't have to do anything. Just show up and don't screw up. And an early spring day, I showed up at Ogilvy in Los Angeles. I handed my card, and 42 years later, I walked out the door.
Amazing. So you mentioned Ogilvy there, which to me, and anyone who's familiar with the firm, is synonymous with big, bold ideas and brands.
Yep.
I'd be curious, today, in your view, what defines a great brand?
So I think it's very simple. I subscribe to the Steve Jobs definition of a brand, which is a brand is all about trust. And great brand builders think about trust as a bank. They try and make deposits in the bank by making their customers, their employees, everybody that interacts with their organization or their product feel great about the brand. When they mess up, when they don't deliver to their promise, it's a withdrawal from the bank. Yeah. The best brands think they're constantly investing, they're constantly adding to the bank, because every brand runs into trouble at some point in their lifetime, and so you better have a good bank account to get through it all.
Yeah. Well, speaking of getting in trouble or change being constant, obviously we live in a very dynamic world now. What are some of the things that you feel the best brands do to evolve and adapt to the changing world around them?
Every brand today has to recognize it lives in a glass box. There is no place to hide. If you upset an employee, they go on to their social media and say that working at brand XYZ sucks. Or if you're bad with your customers and you disappoint them, you don't serve them well, you charge too much, they tell everybody and all their friends about it. And clearly, if you, as a company, go out and make a statement about something that people don't agree with and they think they need to fight back, all of this now happens in a completely transparent and open world. And so you really have to have 3 core things, be really clear about 3 core things to navigate that. One is you better be clear about your purpose. You better be absolutely clear throughout the organization that you know why you matter and what goes into delivering what you promise, and that's your values. What you believe, how you behave, how you stand up in the toughest times. And then, the world's constantly changing, so you better have a strategy that can adapt to the new opportunities, the new realities, the new challenges that the world presents. And I've done a lot of work in the last few years studying companies and talking to their CEOs with the Yale School of Management. And every one of these CEOs says the same thing. When they get in trouble, they go back to the core principles of what's the firm's purpose, what do they believe, what do they value, and are they on the right path in terms of creating value for their audiences?
That's awesome. Thank you for that. So looking back over the last 40 plus years, over your career, what has changed or have things changed in a material way around how you approach brand strategy?
I was privileged to lead Ogilvy and Mather. I was the 9th chairman and CEO in the company's, since the company's founding. I was the last to have worked with all the previous 8 CEOs in my career.
Wow.
And each one of them would tell you, oh, we face these unprecedented changes. David Ogilvy always believed in the principle of divine discontent. Never be satisfied. A little bit like Andy Grove's, only the paranoid survive.
Yeah. I can relate.
Constant betterment. If you fall down, you get back up and you get better. And I think that while every era has its unique set of challenges and problems to face, the fact is that if you believe in the spirit of change and always getting better and confronting adversity, you'll be just fine.
All right, so you had this incredible career and you've moved into retirement. Your golf game has taken off. Why did you decide to join the board of Dynasty? And not just join the board, you wrote a check. So you're an investor and we're aligned shoulder to shoulder. Thank you so much for that on behalf of the entire business and all of our constituents. But what is it about our mission and what we're doing that made you say, yes, I'll come and be a part of what we're doing at Dynasty?
The wonderful thing about working at Ogilvy is that oftentimes you could choose who you wanted to work with. I gravitated to people who had a clear purpose, who thought big about the world, who had values that I admired and almost wanted to emulate, and who created a sense of excitement about the future. Harvey Golub from American Express was one who characterized that type of leader. And so when he introduced me to Dynasty and said I should talk to you, I know you were interviewing me as to would I make a good board member, but I was interviewing you to say, is this somebody I believe in? Am I passionate about what this individual is doing? I love founders. You're a founder. I love companies that care about their people, their customers, the world. And in particular, I like people who have an insatiable ability to say, let's do something new and let's make ourselves better. And Dynasty represents all those things to me. So it was an easy choice to not only spend my money on you, but to spend my time trying to help you in every way I can.
All right. Well, thank you again for doing that. And we're both very blessed to be friends with Harvey and to have Harvey chairing our board.
We are.
All right. So to pivot, and we're coming into the home stretch now, right? So two questions left. You seem like you're doing okay, not too tired. But I want to pivot and ask you a question more specific to financial services because coming out of 2008, there was a lot of distrust, with some of the big brands within wealth management, the brokerage business, banks, certainly. What are some things that financial services brands you think could do now to help them further stand out and regain that trust? But then, if I can cheat and get a second question as part of the same one, more specifically to the RIA space, what are some things that RIAs can do to have their brands stand out in what is a bit of a cluttered and confusing brand arena, if you will, at times?
Yeah. Well, I think there are a few principles. I've worked with a lot of different types of financial service firms. They tend to be occupied with incredibly smart people who are very rational, very numeric. They understand financial sheets. But oftentimes the best financial leaders are the ones who have that skill, but they understand people. They understand what matters to people. Financial services is not unlike healthcare. Your money and your wealth and your health are probably the two most important things, other than the relationships you have with your family, friends, and others, are probably the two most important things to anybody. And I always thought that the financial leaders who woke up every morning kind of owning that responsibility, not just about making more money or being the smartest sector or the smartest company on the street, but knowing the fact that what they did mattered, it was consequential to people's lives, and so the choices they made, the decisions they made them with a sense of, is this good for people? Is this good for the country? Is it good for the world? And I think financial leaders that have that type of perspective, they're the ones that thrive. In the case of an RIA, they're the most direct representation of that philosophy, right? Because they're sitting across the table. They're hearing every day the challenges, the worries, the aspirations that their clients have. And so they know that what they do, how they serve, has to be in the interests of those people first. The fact that they might have a lot of good clients and they might do well themselves, obviously very important. But I suspect if we polled all of your clients, we would find the ones who perform best are the ones who always put their clients first and thought of themselves second.
Couldn't agree more. And we talk a lot about this at Dynasty. We're blessed that we get to live our American dream by empowering others to live theirs.
Right.
And there's beauty in that alignment, because advisors would say the same thing about how they care for their clients. So thank you for that. I couldn't agree more that what we do and what they do matters, and I would perhaps argue matters more now than ever.
Totally.
All right, so last question, and John, this is the same question. I think 60 or so guests now on Around the Track, so this will not surprise you what the question is going to be, and that's, what's your triple crown? And what I mean by that is, what is that big, bold, seemingly unattainable goal, right, that is still out there, that gets you out of bed in the morning to go chase? What would, for you, John, be your triple crown if you could accomplish it in the future?
Well, other than following Rory McIlroy and winning the Masters next year, I don't think that's in my triple crown. But I've been reading a lot about the founders of the country. And I'm inspired by the fact that these were incredibly wise men who had no idea what the future would bring, but had a simple set of principles about what they thought was right. So I'm going to go with the founders' view of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's my triple crown.
Well, I think that sums it up well. John, thank you so much for sitting down and having this conversation on Around the Track. And thank you to all of you for tuning in to another edition of Around the Track.